Welcome to Microsoft SaaS Stories. I'm your host, Jason Young, a curious engineering manager here at Microsoft, and in this episode, we'll be exploring how Sage embraced the opportunities available, shifting their applications to SaaS. They use SaaS as an opportunity to simplify their pricing model. Join me as we hear how they use a thoughtful set of principles to navigate complex changes. Today, I'm speaking with Amaya Suarez, EVP of Cloud Services and Operations at Sage Group. How's it going?
Great. It's going great.
Excellent. It's awesome to have you on here. I know you have some pretty cool stories to tell us here. So why don't we start with this? What does your company focus on, and what are the products that we're going to be talking about today?
Sage is a leader in accounting, financial, HR, and payroll software for small and medium businesses. Medium-sized business being capping out at a 500 employee business.
What are the key products that we'll be talking about?
I think the key product that we're going to be talking about is Sage Intacct, but we also have we have about 200 products globally. In the UK is where the company started, and South Africa, France, Germany. So we have global products. We'll talk a little bit about the journey, I guess.
Yep. Perfect. Yeah, I was excited about this, to hear from I know, I've heard the name Sage before. I'm a little bit familiar with the products, and I know it's a pretty big company, and I'm really interested in hearing what we can learn from you. So, what was the initial motivation for considering a SaaS model?
Well, I mean, if you think about Sage, our purpose is to knock down barriers so everyone can thrive, but really just focused on small and medium businesses. The company was started in 1981 with basically the first desktop accounting package when
Yeah,
desktops were, just starting out.
they were pretty simple.
Yeah. So if you think about small and medium businesses, suppose you're an entrepreneur and you've started a business, and you need to do some kind of accounting in today's world, and probably since about the year 2000. Would you want to have something that you installed on a desktop? Would you want to buy a physical server in today's world, or would you be looking for a piece of software that's a SaaS, delivered via the internet? And I think Sage responded to that and made the shift early on, as early as the early 2000s, and actually started adopting public cloud in around 2004. So, yeah, it's moving where our customers are.
That's pretty cool. So, out of the 40, just over 40 years that Sage has been around, half of it has been, install it, and the other half has been more of a SaaS type of model. So that's pretty good. 50-50 split.
And we still have desktop customers.
Of course.
So so we still have like a pretty serious base of desktop customers, and we still have customers that use server-based products. More and more increasingly, they want us to host those for them, or have partners host them. So we have thousands of instances of dedicated customers on Azure, for example. But yeah, it's still alive and well. But I think gradually over time, it'll as businesses grow and try to scale, then the push towards SaaS continues.
So what does SaaS mean to you today? And I'm assuming that definition has changed over time, right? Like, I don't even think that the term existed back in 2001. So how do you look at SaaS today?
I think for me, it means something different than maybe it means to other people. But I think that people think of it in general. If you're a software business, you think of it as a software delivery mechanism. So, you can onboard customers via trials and then using your SaaS software and so on. But for me, because I have a heavy infrastructure background, it means I'm more focused on the as a service part. And as a service for means that it needs to be always on. So if you look at the leaders on always on, we're now today in 2023, and probably for the last 5 years, so used to video streaming, for example. And we don't even think about how difficult it was originally to get video streaming to work so that you wouldn't have, failures when you're watching something on Netflix. But
Hmm.
for a software company, the bar is high in terms of making sure that your product is performing and resilient. And that's a feature, and it becomes the number one feature, because if things are slow and not performant, then customers just leave and they go and find a different product that will perform and that they can use. If suddenly they want to do their accounting on the weekend and they've got a tax due date, they don't want to go to a product and it's going to be slow because it's loaded with everybody else trying to do their taxes.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, we all know the type of website, right? You go there and there's just this huge delay in every action that you take, and you just dread going out there. And then it is so satisfying whenever you go to a different site and everything is just extremely responsive, and basically the computer is always waiting on you in those cases. It's such a better feeling for sure.
definitely.
Yeah. So when building out SaaS, then, in what ways, like how did you leverage the Microsoft tech stack?
Well, interestingly, we have actually um, several cloud services that are internal and even externally provided that leverage and were built on the Microsoft tech stack.
Mhm.
I may not have even told you about those, but including using Traffic Manager across regions, including being highly resilient. So if a AZ or a region went down, it will fail over. Those things are integral to something that we call the digital network or the Sage network, which is a backbone to many of our accounting products. So
Hmm.
there's services that every accounting product needs in order to provide those services to customers, things like banking or payments, being able to pay suppliers or accept payments from customers. So, um, but most recently, we formed a deeper strategic partnership with Microsoft, and we now have Sage Intacct on multi-cloud. Um, and Sage Intacct has been a SaaS product since it was started around 1999 or 2000. However, it was primarily hosted on physical infrastructure.
Hmm. Okay. So you had to go through um, it sounds like there was probably a lot of steps along the way, to get where you're at this point, right?
Definitely, yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. And then what does the pricing model look like for your software? And I know you have a lot of different pieces of software. So do you have different pricing models, and like do the pricing models vary whether, for like your SaaS products, and I'm also curious if it varies for SaaS products that were more born in the cloud versus, the ones that were on-prem that came into the cloud. Like how do you look at pricing?
Subscription based across the board.
Hmm.
There are different levels and different things, as you mentioned, like per user licensing and different types of users, like lower end users or admin users, these type of things. So
Hmm.
it's quite complex. Um, yeah, so luckily I'm not responsible for IT, but my IT partner is always telling me about the complexity of all the SKUs for pricing. So it's
Hmm.
it's incredibly complex. But the biggest push has been to get everything onto subscriptions, including the desktop products.
Okay. And that probably really simplifies the whole situation.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah. And then is it per user or is it per install? How does that work? Well, I guess it's not an install, it's SaaS, right? So is it more focused like the number of users?
Yeah, primarily that's the
Okay.
focus. Yeah,
So,
primarily.
so SaaS really helps simplify that then.
Yeah, definitely. We also have some consumption-based pricing, like
Hmm.
API consumption or other things that we're exploring now with some of the services that we have. So,
Okay. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So actually it's a really nice side effect of going to SaaS, is that it's an opportunity to simplify and make the pricing model easier for customers. I love it.
yep.
And then along the way, along this SaaS journey, like what in your mind, what were the biggest challenges? And then do you think they were mostly business? Were they mostly technical?
Um, I would have to say, and this is maybe just me with regards to all technology is the
Mm-hmm.
biggest challenges start with people and their understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think their motivations. So, but once you can get aligned on the same vision and have some principles like, SaaS means this,
Mm-hmm.
it means always on, it means, um, I don't know, stateless connections or whatever those
Mm-hmm.
principles are, you're going to establish that. And then once everybody understands that, then understanding technically how to get there, um, the technology does exist, as we used to say.
Yeah. Oh, I love that approach though, just leading with the core principles and then letting everybody figure out how they make those things happen. If you have to be highly available, then you know that you have to design the architecture in a certain way on the
Yep.
technical side. And then on the business side, you have to have the right staffing to manage that as well in case there's issues. So
Yeah.
everything
For
flows from
me,
those principles.
yeah, sorry. For me, one of the key principles needs to
Mm-hmm.
be zero downtime changes, and zero
Mm-hmm.
downtime releases. That's a big shift for developers who have been developing the context of, releasing a package that's going to get deployed by a customer on a server.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you're breaking down all your changes into smaller units. The shift to having to do pre-production or staging, as some people call it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, zero downtime changes, and I would say right now the majority of our changes are zero downtime. So I try to make it easier. Like you don't have to go to a change cab if you're doing a zero downtime change. But if you had to plan some downtime, then you're going to go into a change cab and get grilled on how are you
Mm-hmm.
managing it, what's your fallback plan, this sort of thing. So
Mm-hmm. What is a change cab? I haven't heard that term.
change advisory board.
Oh, okay.
This is an operations world where, so
Right, right.
um,
So you send out the right notifications to your customers and
yeah.
get the right sign offs and okay.
Hmm.
I hadn't heard the terminology on top of the process. So
Yeah.
okay, cool. I always learn something from these episodes for sure. Okay, that makes a ton of sense. So it sounds like you're generally shipping features then instead of software. If you think back to the early days, it would have been, this is version 2 of our software. Now you can go and install this. And now it's, hey, we have a new feature as that we've pushed out again with zero downtime. So that's a good model change.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So as you've been through this process and gone through all of these steps and all of these challenges, knowing what you know now, is there anything that you wish you had done differently?
Yeah, I think and I see this over and over again, and maybe it's not even just specific to Sage, but in the specific Sage example, there was a desire to deploy a product out into another country.
Mm-hmm.
And so, well, how are we going to do this? Are we going to go and purchase hardware, and what are we going
Mm-hmm.
to do? And so, a decision was made to go to public cloud. But in that decision, the operations team presented an option that was a single AZ, so one availability zone with the disaster recovery in a physical data center
Mm-hmm.
back in the U.S. So, um, I found out about this after I had joined Sage, and for me, that's not an option that you should ever present to your business teams.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something like just for anybody who's out there who's thinking about, hey, we want to do SaaS or we want to go to public cloud, present a resilient option because resiliency and stability is the number one feature. And this isn't my opinion, or maybe it's also a site reliability engineering opinion, but your minimum bar needs to have a level of resiliency so that if you actually had an outage or that AZ went down, that you're not impacting your customers. So it may be, you're thinking I'm giving them a bare bones price, but all you're doing is creating that as an option that's in their head that they can do it. So we've actually done a ton of work now to re-architect it, and we're moving further and further now that we've partnered with Microsoft and we've got we're on Azure, and we're also moving towards a active,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully. And but we've already solved and moved all of the DR to in-region public cloud, so that we can actually fail over a lot faster. It's cut our RTO in half already.
Excellent.
So so that for me, it's when you're going to make a decision to start taking a product and moving it to public cloud or moving it to SaaS, is you need to start with those principles in terms of resiliency. How is it going to handle failure? You don't have to think about that when you're shipping a software to somebody to install in their
Mm-hmm.
own server, but designing for failure, and the fact that anything can break
Mm-hmm.
needs to be probably the number one principle.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like that's driven by the customers, right? Your customers have, I assume, very little tolerance for their systems not working, as you mentioned, like right before tax time or other,
Hmm.
critical times of in the calendar year. They can't just sit around for 3 hours because the software is down. So they demand it, and then you deliver on that and make sure that it works. Without them, to them it's just transparent, right? Like they're just using the software and they just say, hey, this is reliable, it always works for us.
Yeah, and I think another thing that happens is you think, okay, this product only has 10 customers,
Mm-hmm.
and so, well, it doesn't really need to be as resilient or something, but it's really a false assumption. It doesn't mean it has to be bulletproof, but it's not the same as in the past where we would say, oh, well, I don't want to buy two sets of hardware.
Mm-hmm.
With public cloud,
Right.
you don't really have to be as concerned about that, because you can have more than one AZ,
Mm-hmm.
and at an overall cost, it's going to be more cost effective than what we used to have to do when we did physical infrastructure.
Oh yeah,
So
imagine getting three separate physical locations back in the real world
yeah.
outside of the cloud, and how impossible that was. So that is definitely something that the cloud enables, right? Easily. It's like
Hmm.
once you're, you know, duplicating your infrastructure in a second availability zone is rather trivial, honestly.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then let's talk about scale. How do you build all of this in a scalable way?
Mm. Yeah, I thought about this question because it's a really good question, because the mistake could be that you think that you've designed it to scale
Mm-hmm.
and you deploy it and your work is done. And it's actually a continual effort where, as you scale, let's say suddenly, I don't know, it's tax season,
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly you have double the load that you expected on your product.
Mm-hmm.
Or let's say you have a product that's used in a gaming convention or something,
Mm-hmm.
a payment gateway or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Things break in unexpected ways, is my message to the world. So you definitely will load test everything before it goes into production. But because of the unevenness and the different, I guess, the different ways that it could be used, it might be a different usage pattern on a given day, or because of some event or a calendar thing, like I've got to get my tax filed on this date.
Mm-hmm.
Then you could have a piece of your product start going under the strain of load that you weren't able to completely test. So my message is, you're going to have to continually look at making further adjustments for scale. And if you keep working on it, you're going to be way more cost effective, because oftentimes it's a small little change um, on the memory config, or some small change, and it
Mm-hmm.
actually improves your performance and reduces your cost
Mm-hmm.
overall.
Yeah. So it might be good to actually have some contingency plans, right? So, just say run through all of the scenarios and say, hey, what if these particular services, have double the load or 10x the load, or what if we run into memory constraints here? Like, it's probably a good exercise to think about all of the different ways that the application could fail, and
Hmm.
then just have a plan in place so that when it's tax season, and even if you, like you said, you think that you're all set, and then the system starts to fall down, you're not, in a mad dash to figure out, like, what are we going to do? You just, like, you open up the orange envelope and it says, add more servers here.
Yeah, exactly. Or adjust your auto scaling thresholds
Mhm.
or something like that,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, cool. And then, are there any particular Azure services that you think are critical to building a scalable application? Like anything that's really helped you out?
That's a really good question. I think actually the Achilles heel of all, especially things like accounting, of all products is going to be the database. Um, so getting away from instances on a VM and moving to an RDS or moving to something that's more scalable
Hmm.
is really important, and it's maybe the more difficult side of things, because it requires you to change how you connect to your database. So, other than that, I kind of really give you a name of a service, because for me, I think it's the totality of what you're delivering
Hmm.
that needs to be considered and balanced.
Exactly. Definitely. That's a valuable lesson for people. And then, what about security? Like, how do you think about security and building these applications in a secure way?
Definitely, again, it's similar to the scaling question in that it requires constant care and feeding.
Hmm.
One of the things, I think, getting your engineering staff and getting your operations staff to think about SaaS and to think about delivering online services. We created a cloud academy inside of Sage, and
Okay.
I was the sponsor for it. It started with the well-architected framework. Everybody in product needs to learn what the well-architected framework is. And we still have plenty of engineers that are developing desktop products, but over time, they need to learn this too. So
Hmm.
for me, that fundamentals, and then there was role-based training. So if you're a PM, you need to incorporate work on resiliency, work on security, work on performance into your scrums, or however you're managing your roadmap and your sprints and things like that. That needs to be included always, and that's a big shift because it's not just about features anymore. The
Right.
security is a feature. The last thing you want is to have a customer see data from a different customer,
Mm.
or any number of things that could happen, or to have a ransomware attack or something like that. So security is a feature. um, Resiliency is a feature, and that's part of, like, changing your mindset to really understand that and to make sure that you're incorporating it in every single sprint sometimes.
Hmm.
So
So for you, it is not just a thing that you add to the software. It is also one of those principles that you go back to. Like, these are the principles that we have. Our software is going to be resilient. It's going to be scalable, and we are going to all have a security mindset.
yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Cool. And then, what about the hot topic of the day? And actually, I mean, I think this has some staying power. I don't think it's a fad. But have you leveraged any AI capabilities in your software?
Yeah, I mean, actually, Sage started on the AI journey years and years ago,
Hmm.
and we have a dedicated AI team that kind of acts as a center of excellence, but also has built some key capabilities that are part of our products. So we have accounts payable automation flow that's embedded into quite a few products that on the back end uses some AI capabilities. Uh, we also have a general ledger outlier detection service that people can use, that uses machine learning to look at, like, any outliers you might have in your ledger. And then more recently, we're working with Microsoft to leverage Azure AI, some generative AI. We're incorporating that into our chatbot. Our chatbot's called Peg, but I don't know. It's like, we've had this chatbot for a while. It was using Q&A Maker, but now we're using Azure AI on the back end so that it can help agents and customers when they ask a question. It can interpret what they really need a little bit better and have a way better experience for our customers.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, and internally we have a lot of work going on right now and trying out how can we use generative AI around code, content generation,
Mm-hmm.
all those user docs and things that you're always writing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like every company is doing that right now. Like it is
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is this is this is a trend that is so it is so big right now. I've never seen any other trend like this where like a lot of companies will ignore certain technologies, but like every company is definitely paying attention right now. So it's good to hear you're experimenting with that and already using it and have an AI team. So
Yeah.
that really positions you to take advantage of this.
I've been in technology a long time, and when desktop PCs were first being sold and deployed into companies. So I guess my thing about it is we have a value at Sage called human, where we're thinking about
Mm-hmm.
the human impact and what are the ethics around AI and things like that is really important to the company. The way that I think about it though is humans are creative creatures. We've been
Mm-hmm.
creating tools to help us, I don't know, plow fields
Mm-hmm.
and the wheel and everything else, right? Forever.
Mm-hmm.
So AI is just another tool that we've
Yeah.
created. So we just need to think of it as human to use a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, um, it's about how do we use it in an ethical fashion? What's the impact of these algorithms and that sort of thing. So, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, we're going to use it as we can. Exactly.
Yeah. Of course. Of course. Cool. And then, are you available? Do you have software available in the Azure Marketplace? And then, if so, like, what benefits have you seen from having a transactable app in there?
Yes, Sage Intacct is now available on the Azure Marketplace
Mhm.
in the US. As we expand to other countries, it'll be available on the Azure Marketplace there. I think the main benefit is just more reach for our product, ability to do co-sell, ability to work with partners, um, and just make it much easier to transact.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. Anything else you wanted to mention that maybe we didn't cover in the questions that I asked?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the main thing is it's a journey.
Mhm.
SaaS is a journey. It may be a destination, but once you get your first SaaS product out there, it's just the beginning.
Well, that is a good ending. So, thank you so much, Amaya, for sitting down to talk with me about Sage and that journey. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason.